Hey gamers, Cell here. Ever since the start of this franchise 30 years ago, diverse regions have been a staple of Pokemon games. With little towns, urban cities, dense forests, grassy routes linking everything together, caves with billions of Zubats, creepy places, man-made dungeons, and even the ocean itself. It's what makes your journey through the games fun, and every region in Kanto has built on its foundation and added their own flavor to it. For 26 years, this was the formula, and it stuck for a reason. But what would happen if we changed that? What if we scrapped regions and just had Pokemon games set in one big city instead? Can one city compensate for the lack of a whole region? And what would be the consequence of deviating from this effective formula? Well, that's exactly what this video is about. I want to go through the issues of CA's Lumiose and see whether or not it actually works. Okay, so one of the main talking points around Lumiose pre-release was that the game set in a single city would be too small. And honestly, those concerns were pretty much spot on. It is a really small game, and you can explore most of it right away in the first few hours as soon as the tutorial lets you go. Of course, it's infinitely bigger than any other city in Pokemon, but CA's Lumiose isn't competing with cities, it's competing with regions. Every region all the way from Kanto to Hisui and Paldea has been way bigger than Lumiose is. To confirm this, I ran through and around Lumiose City. It only took 3 minutes to run from one side to the other, and it only took 5 minutes to run all the way around the city. The game is so small they didn't even bother giving you ride Pokemon, even though Lumiose had Go-Goats back in 2013. Now, for reference, I did the same thing in Legends Arceus, running from one end of the Obsidian Fieldlands to the other. It took me 5 minutes, and the Fieldlands aren't even 20% of that game. I didn't test this in any other game, but I'm pretty sure you can't run from one side of the map to another in 3 minutes in any of the other games either. Hell, even with the bike you can't do that. So this is the smallest game we ever had, and in adventure games, exploration is kind of a pretty major aspect. There isn't much exploring to do in Lumiose, because there isn't much of Lumiose to explore. Most of the buildings aren't accessible, you only have 2 small underground dungeons, and there's not much going on the rooftops either besides finding birds to catch. So you don't exactly use the space well either, it's just a small, dense ball of nothing. But of course, quantity isn't all that matters in life. We also have to look at quality. And the quality of Lumiose isn't much better really. The buildings all look the same. I mean, they could have at least had differently colored buildings or something. And like I said, most of them are inaccessible, and you only have 2 small dungeons that are both part of the main story, so they're not exactly fun, optional, secret areas to find and explore at your own leisure. The whole place is just one big, boring concrete hellhole that all looks the same, and you have the same song playing in the whole overworld for some reason. Unlike how a region has a new theme in most of its towns and cities, and you even have route themes, and I mean, some dungeons have themes, but like not every cave. You have a surf theme and stuff. But yeah. There's not much to explore and there's not much to do either. You have your CA Royale and Wild Zones to catch Pokemon in. You have over 100 side quests, but the majority of them aren't really worth doing. It's mostly just fetch quests, break this rock, wash away this pile of sludge, battle this trainer, etc. Of course, there are a few memorable ones, but when this is the only side content in the game, I don't think the amount of actually good ones is nearly high enough. I would have liked more returning characters, and maybe one of the side quests could have finally done something with the Ghost Girl from X and Y, but no, none of that. I also would have liked something with like contests or a battle facility with more interesting battle styles than the CA Royale slop, but no, there's just catching and normal battles. But at least you do have a museum to visit. I enjoyed it quite a lot because there's a lot of fan service for Legends Arceus Glaciers, but that's about it. The Kalos parts aren't really interesting. Now, on to another big topic of discussion before launch, the Wild Zones. After Legends Arceus designed its whole region around massive open spaces for the Pokemon to live in and for you to wander around, it was a pretty drastic change to go to these small zoo enclosures all over the city. I was worried this would be a problem, and I think it is. It feels super cramped and unnatural. Most of the zones only have like 2 or 3 of each Pokemon, and they're all huddled together. There's not much space there. Meanwhile, in Legends Arceus, you'll see groups of Pokemon that have these massive spaces where them and one or two other species of Pokemon live, and it's all just like natural areas. It feels more natural and proper because it is. But credit where it's due, this is actually a part of the story and setting. Like, you have Eivor in particular who wants to change this, and you have a lot of nameless NPCs who'll mention it around Lumiose. So it's a contentious issue in game, not just among fans. But still, I'm not a fan of this approach. It's fine for a one-off game, but I don't want them to do this again. And although it's not as fun because the wild zones are so small, I do really enjoy the catching style that returns from Legends Arceus. So, since this was the first game we got that takes place in just one city, I came into it wondering how this would affect the rest of Kalos. Does Kalos get its fair share of fan service? Do we hear about how Kalos as a region has evolved, or what's going on elsewhere? Do we learn about the lore of the region? The answer to all these questions is no. Legends CA does none of that. They only focus on Lumiose and the whole game. The Lumiose Museum gives Hisui some spotlight and lore implications, but all the Kalos related parts of the museum are just references to stuff we saw in X and Y, like Geosenge Town and the Tower of Mastery in Shullar City. Honestly, I think this kind of sucks. Legends Arceus was a big love letter to Sinnoh, where different parts of the region like Jubilife, Floroma and Mount Coronet all get thrown a bone. You have musical fan service like Eternal Forest's theme being incorporated in Heartwood's theme. And you have all the answers like Arasu and Volo. Of course, CA is a sequel, so it wouldn't have the same kind of fan service Legends Arceus does. But it should still be getting something. Unless you're super into Team Flare, you probably feel kinda let down if you're a big Kalos fan. It is nice to see them doing something with the Looker and Emma story from the post-game though. Emma is a great part of this game, and we all love her for a variety of reasons. But yeah, for future Legends games, I really hope they don't neglect their regions like this. I would be devastated if you never got robbed of its fan service. But Lumiose isn't all bad, so I think it's important to balance this out with some positivity. For the city itself, I think it's nice to have a city as big as this in Pokemon, because obviously we've never had anything close to this. I wish it wasn't the only thing in the game though, but I'm still glad we have it. It's fun to run around on the rooftops, get from rooftop to rooftop, do some air parkour with your Rotom phone, and take in nice views from the top of those tall buildings. Even though the scenery gets kinda old sometimes, it looks pretty cool from above. Although we only have the two small dungeons, I do appreciate both of them. I mentioned in my last video wanting to see some sewers, and we did see sewers, but not for very long, and there's not much to do besides finding Gwyn and catching some Pokemon. But it's nice to get our first sewer since Black and White 2. And also, I have to give some praise to Lysander Labs. It was fun to go down there even if there was not much to do. It doesn't do the whole like worn down base aesthetic as well as Ennis Castle in Black and White 2, but it's something. You get some Team Flare lore and you can catch Beldum and Metang, meet the mysterious L. Good stuff. And one last thing to praise. I quite like the cast of characters. Obviously, Corbo's a fan favorite for good reason. You have other fun characters like Gwyn, Eivor, Lida and Canary. Maybe you like your synth more than I do. And I love Mabel. It's nice to see them take a character no one cared about in X and Y and make her so memorable in this game. We've never had a character like her take the professor role. It's really refreshing to have a moody and jaded person in their 20s forced to work instead of the usual trustworthy and responsible adult. I feel seen and represented. Thank you, Game Freak. So, with all the complaints and all the praise out of the way, that's about it. I don't want to be too harsh since it is pretty hard to replace the size, diversity and content of a whole region with just one city, but they don't do a great job at it. It's okay as a one-off thing, but I hope they don't do a single city game again anytime soon. I mean, it can be okay for like a spin-off, but not a main game. But despite all the complaints, I did actually enjoy CA quite a bit. It was a fun game, nice kind of twist on Pokemon, just going away from the formula for a bit. So I hope they can learn from what worked and what didn't, and try to, apply the good things to the next games, and try to avoid some of the mistakes. But yeah, leave a like if you found this somewhat enjoyable, subscribe if you want to hear me yap again, leave a hate comment if you don't. yeah, so originally I had like a little part here about what we might see on Pokemon Day. But Pokemon Day was kind of 2 months ago, so I kind of had to cut out that part. But yeah, Winds and Waves looks decent, so hopefully that's good eventually. Bye, gamers.